I'm Lamont Jack Pearley, interviewing Dr. Harold T. Aldridge Jr., Blues Narrative Collaboration, Jack Dapper Blues Heritage Preservation Foundation, OSU Archive Library, Oral History.
All of those. Yes.
Okay, and Renniesville Blues Museum, Oklahoma Blues Hall of Fame Museum at the Dusk Till Dawn. And the date is Friday, August 30th, 2024. All right. Sir, Dr. Aldridge, how are you, sir?
I'm hanging in there for a senior citizen.
Senior citizen, so that means a wise man.
I hope there's wisdom there.
So, well, Dr. Aldridge, talk to us about your education and how you stepped into the role of, would you say historian?
Kind of like a historian, yes. What I found out is there's a term that is applied to people who do what I do, and it's called an infotainer. I'd never heard the word before, and I had to look it up, and it's someone who entertains and educates at the same time. So that's what I do with the blues music. I was raised in Taft, Oklahoma, one of the all-black towns. And when I grew up in segregated Oklahoma. When I was 8 years old, I fell out of a tree being a damn fool and broke my arm. And my dad, who had just gotten back from World War II, 6 years, took me to the Muskogee Hospital Muskogee General, they called it then. And segregated Oklahoma, they turned me away. And so they took me to the black hospital, and they had no anesthetics, no x-rays or anything. So my arm was set crooked. Mm. And so for a while, whenever I got involved with playing some games with the rest of the kids, they would say, give me that big head boy with the bow-legged arm, because my arm was so crooked. And so with that was my education, early education into Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And then in school, we played all black towns, all the black schools. And it wasn't until tournament time that we got to play whites. And so that was early on. And so my experiences in growing up in Taft was that Taft had no law. It had no fire department, no law. So there was no curfews. So Taft had juke joints, beer places, and one club up across the tracks, they used to say. And up there would be shaking those galloping dominoes. There would be frying chicken and hamburgers. And in the back, that's where the gaming was. And he had cabinets along the wall that he could lock, and that's where the booze was. And so when you got there, you get a setup, which is some ice in a bucket and some pop or something. And you'd buy you a little half a pint, or you come in with whatever you had. And so early on, I would go with my dad as a young kid. He took me hunting and everywhere. And when we would go and he'd visit a couple of these juke joints, beer places, and I would be standing between his legs watching these adults act silly once they get some of that shine in them.
Moonshine.
Moonshine.
So, could I ask a quick question about moonshine?
Yes.
Were they making it at the location, or was it?
Oh, no. It was clandestine. And I got to know the guy that made it. He lived to be 102, and when I interviewed him, he said, my daughter doesn't want me to tell you all the specifics of what I've done, but she's not here right now. So I got in on everything that he was doing and what he did, and he even taught another guy what to do with it and all of that. And at the time in Taft, this one place, the guy had transferred his living room into a juke joint. And he was the first guy in Taft to have a television. And it had about 10 knobs on it, small frame picture. But he sold shot glasses of shine for 2 bits, which was 25 cents.
Mm-hmm.
And usually once they get a little 2 or 3 of those shots in them, they would start popping their fingers and singing along and all of that. And I would be watching them and I'd say, you know, I'm going to see Miss So-and-so in church tomorrow.
So, you know, this is amazing because most people equate juke houses and juke joints to Mississippi, but there's a culture in Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah. It was in Taft, and I imagine in the other black towns, they had some of the same stuff. But because Taft had no curfew and it had so much going for it, people would come from everywhere, all these other little towns. They come from Tulsa, come from Muskogee, and it would go on, especially up across the tracks. It would go on all night until the next day. But the beer joints would close down whenever they got tired. They didn't have to, you know, when the traffic quit showing up, they would shut down. But before then, they would just let it go.
I have to ask you this because you mentioned this a couple of times. Actually, you kind of singled out to start that part of your narrative. No curfew, no law. So other black towns around or other white towns around had
No.
curfews and laws? Or
Oh, yeah, like Muskogee, Tulsa, and probably the other towns like Haskell, Boynton, they would shut down. And so those satellite communities around Taft would show up. And then, like I said, they would show up from Tulsa, Muskogee. And the other place that was known for that was Redbird. It had an all-night thing. And you know, what was so amazing is that there were no fights. There was no gunplay, no knifing, none of that. And there was no law. And so they just took care of it, I guess. I don't know what they were doing, how they did it. And when I would be walking from school and pass these beer joints and hear them in there having fun, I thought, one of these days, I'll be right in there.
So, well, you know, that's a very good segue because you kind of, W.E.B. Du Bois had a double consciousness possibly with the blues people and then the academia, right? What was the catalyst of going into academia, and what kept you grounded in both worlds?
That's a good question. I guess I had fixated on the music because I had a cousin that was 7 or 8 years older than me. Somehow or another, her parents died or something, and the family decided that she would move in with us. She was like 16. And she brought 78 records of blues. Muddy, Lightning, all of those guys. And that charmed me. And then when we go I would go with my dad to these places and they'd be playing that music and people seemed to be enjoying it. That was in me. Now the education was also in me because both of my parents were school teachers. And so they made sure that I was going to stick with academia. So somehow or another, between my parents and the music, it coalesced inside of me.
What, you kind of, not kind of, you said it, but I would like you to go in a little bit more detail of what was it about the blues and the blues people that inspired you to take that on as scholarship, the books, the writing, the community studies?
When I really started studying the blues and listening to what they were saying, and a lot of it seemed nonsensical to me. Because then I found out they would take one rip of music and do 7 or 8 different songs to it, and then include songs from something else that didn't make sense in there. And then some of the songs were coded. They were saying messages. They were saying, my baby not treating me right. And they were actually talking about their boss man or the plantation owner. And because they couldn't say it, they coded it in their music. And that was intriguing to me once I started studying it and understanding what they were doing. And so what I started doing was taking some of their songs and making them socio-conscious, political. And of course, that doesn't go over very well in the blues space because they think I'm being political and I'm just saying what they weren't able to say years ago.
I have to ask you to define socio-political in regards to these lyrics. What does that mean to you, and how did you want it to be received?
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say what wasn't said back then. And I'm trying to figure out a way to say it in such a way that it's educational. It gets the point across so that people hear the music and hear what the old timers are saying. They can get a better reading. Now, what's happening now, blues is evolving. It has changed so much. It depends on which part of the country, what time it is. And I haven't heard rap blues yet, but they got rock and roll blues. They got all kinds of other stuff. And then, but what the old timers were trying to do is the foundation of it. And that's what I'm trying to keep pushed and keep alive, is the foundation. What was it in the beginning? And many times the blues, because they didn't make political statements or socio-cultural statements, they were just playing music so these people could dance the blue devils off. Mm-hmm. That's what they call the blues. Dance it off so that it was cathartic for them, so that they could go back to work and not carry what happened the other day before. And so, one of the things that I see is that from Europe, they came in with ballads and stories. But the slaves and the people during Jim Crow era, they couldn't tell the story. They had to code it. And then once they moved it into just being about some woman then left you, something's wrong and all of that, that got play. But the stories from the Black experience wasn't going to get any play.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm trying to keep doing.
Amazing. So you're on this trajectory of, I guess, presenting blues in the academic space and in the blues space. When did you meet Selby in DC?
In about, I think it was 2005, me and another guy named Pat Moss, and we had a duo. And we opened up for him at a place on the river in Tahlequah called Roxy's. And we were doing the foundation stuff. Pat was blowing harmonica and guitar, and I was playing guitar and singing. And after we opened up for him, then DC asked if we would consider coming down here in the blues festival. And what we did for a few years is in between the different bands on the major stage, we did, there's a term for it, fill in. We filled in the middle of, in between the gigs. Well, that got old pretty quick because it wears you out.
Mm-hmm.
You're having to concern yourself with what these guys are doing and what this guy is going to do. And sometimes they get locked into trying to get their equipment, so they make you play more songs. So that kind of burned me out on that deal, and I told Selby, I don't know how long we did it, but I told her, give me the back porch. Pat wanted to go in with a group, and I played with him a little bit, but you got all these other egos to have to deal with. It's like trying to get a team together. And so I thought, no, I'll just go back to the foundation. And that's what I've been trying to do, keep a solo act and keep the foundation.
Is it safe to say 23 years at this point? Since 2005 to today.
Yeah.
So what does the actual space mean to you as it pertains to blues and community?
Oh, I don't understand you. What is the actual space? What do you think?
The festival, the location.
Yeah.
When it comes to blues people,
yeah,
and then the community that participates. What does it mean to you? What do you see? What do you feel? How do you engage it?
Well, I see it as what's keeping one Black town alive. And Selby and DC did great with that, and Selby has been doing tremendous, without DC here. And keeping it alive in an all-Black town, a historical all-Black town. And that, I think, is important because the other Black towns, they also get Selby to come and play for them when they're putting on their festivals. Like this fall, Grayson, used to be Wildcat and all of that. They have a festival, Gumbo Festival, and she's opened up for them. She's played at Clearview for their festival. I don't know if she's played at Bowley and then the other places are too small.
So there's a connection of the Black communities in the area.
Right.
That still engages the traditional music and expression?
Yes. Yes.
And you would say
It's limited, but it's being done.
and so is it safe to say Selby honored DC's wishes to keep?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's honored it and done well. That girl has a hustle to her. She'll get up off her rusty dusty and make something happen.
How significant is it to you for the people of the blues to be, if nothing else, at root of celebration of the blues in these spaces?
Run that by me again. Say
How important is it for you for Black Americans to be at the root of the celebration of the blues here?
Yeah. Well, right now, it's white folks that's keeping the blues alive. And because of that, blues is starting to evolve in a different genre. And with Black folks, I can't say for the younger Black folks because they didn't come up with the same type of experiences that my generation did. But I would hope that one of them, one group or something, would try to get to the core of the blues to keep the foundation. I think it's important to have the foundation and then let it evolve in any way it wants to, but always be able to go back to the foundation.
I just asked you that. While I'm looking, do you have a question? Or two or three?
Hi, I'm Sarah Milligan. I actually did have a question about what you just said. So if it's important for young people to know what the foundation is, like how do you explain that to someone who, you know, like how do you explain what the foundation of blues? Is it just what you said earlier about understanding how blues evolved from slave narratives to this sort of coded language?
Right. To understand that there are a number of things that happened. There was plantation talk, which was coded. And to the masters, it sounded as if it was gibberish. And then in their music, they portrayed a African beat. I guess beat is not the term. It's kind of like Zora Neale Hurston went through the South and wrote about what her experiences were. And one of the things she mentioned was High John the Conqueror, which was a spirit, the spirit of the blues, the foundation of it. And from that spirit, it helped them to transcend their circumstances. So you had field hollers, hollering way over there to another guy on the plantation. You had work songs where they would be in time. You had chants to understand what a chant was, and toast. And I just found this out about 4 or 5 years ago. In the Deep South, the Native Americans influenced the blues some with their drumming and how they threw themselves into their songs. It fit right in there with how the former slaves and the freedmen did. And so if they can understand that, if they can learn about it, then from that, then whatever they have inside of them can come out through this approach, the fundamentals of the blues. And I was listening to some Africans in Northwest Africa, and they play a blues lyric. It's a sound, it's a feeling. And when they heard John Lee Hooker, they was like, how could this happen? This is our music. And but that's the foundation of it. And so that's what I'd like for them to. And to do that, you've got to study. You can't just think that you know something. I thought I knew something until I started reading and looking these guys up and trying some other stuff. And like what Lamont has got going, getting into the folkways and the legacies and all of that. And then I started understanding what it was about. And I thought, you know, the foundation of the blues could be sung right today. And we can say it, it doesn't have to be coded. But a lot of that is not going to sell well.
Well, you're also an educator, so
Yeah,
it's both your hats coming together, it seems like.
Yeah.
What do you think it's important for people to know about the space that is Oklahoma today? Because part of what we're looking at is like what you talked about with Taft, right? Like you saw it, you felt it, you lived it. That's how you knew this music and this culture was part of your community. But also Oklahoma as a larger place has a blues legacy that if you're outside of the state, you are surprised by, I think. So what do you think it's important for people to know about blues history and culture in Oklahoma?
That's a good question, because Oklahoma was like a crossroad. They came through from Texas, from Louisiana, from Mississippi, through here up to Kansas City, Wichita, and from here, it was a hub. It went on to California, the West Coast. And Selby and DC, they traveled that route a lot. And that's why they call it Blues on the Move. Their first groups. And so Oklahoma was a hub for the music. And when it came in through here, it mixed. In Tulsa and Oklahoma City, it mixed. And then these little towns, they were more foundation. Like I learned to play thumb and index finger from the bus driver there in Taft. When he found out that I was playing the guitar, he told my daddy, have Harold Jr. to get in touch with me. And I was strumming, I didn't know much but just chords. And but he had religion. He wouldn't sing the songs, but he showed me how to play them.
So how did he know them? Did he tell you where he learned them?
No, he never did. But his wife, one time I was up there learning from it, and his wife said, why don't you sing a song for him? And he sang to her, You Are My Sunshine. And he played it with a blues lick to it.
Keeping it safe.
Keeping it safe, you know.
Yeah.
So I had a little band, and we would play there in Taft for one or two different juke joints. And but we were still in high school. And the guy who ran the place told us that if we get raided, I want you to get your guitars, go out the back door and hide in the hedges. We never had to hide in the hedges, but that's what we were doing.
You had a plan.
I had a plan. And so I went off to college and all of that and played in a band. When I came back to Oklahoma, I wasn't playing with the band, and I thought about what the bus driver showed me, and I thought, I could play just by myself. I don't need anybody else. And that's when I started trying to learn and listen to what they were doing. That's when I fell out with how they would just add a lyric to a song that didn't fit. And I was like, what are they doing? And when I found out, they would have a lick going, and they would play that lick in the chords and the changes all night long and just bring in stuff and make up stuff while they were doing it.
Did you learn about that just from watching, or did you ask someone to explain it to you?
No, it just took study. I didn't get to talk to anybody. I watched it and I studied it and I listened to them. And then once they started interviewing these guys, I got every tape that I could from each one of them. And I listened to them and watched them closely. And once I found out what was going on, then I could relax about, well, this doesn't make sense. And you got to say something. And then I ran across one guy named Belton Sutherland. And he was just right out in the open with it. He wasn't coding anything. And I thought, how did he get away with that? Well, he never really made it. You know, you couldn't make it singing that kind of race music. So that's, I guess, why I keep doing this. And I was telling Lamont after my injury that I'm losing the ability to play a lot of stuff. And I decided that since I can't pick like I used to, I can strum a little bit, but I still got the messages. Yeah. And I try to tell, you know, there are a couple of guys that are doing this foundation stuff, and I keep telling them, don't you quit, don't change it. You got to have the foundation. But if you want to make some money, you got to go out there and shake the bushes with what the people are looking for. And
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Kind of piggybacking off Sarah's question, I thought that was a great question. Would you say your infotainment is a package to introduce younger audiences to tradition?
Yeah. Absolutely. And since I'm carrying it, I've got to pass it on. It's like when I wrote that book, I had to, with what I knew, I had to pass it on, because when my coworker, after I made that presentation at Northeastern for the Black Heritage on Martin Luther King, and I told about segregation and separate water fountains, bathrooms, and what happened with me and the hospital and all of that. She saw me in the hallway, co-worker, same age mate, and said she enjoyed what I was saying, but she didn't remember all of that. And I thought, well, the town you must have come from, they already knew better. And so they weren't going to try to walk in a restaurant or go in a movie theater or get on a bus and sit on the front. You know, you out of your mind. You're not from around here, are you, boy?
You know, the book is about, your book is about, you did a lot of civil rights work, correct?
I guess I did, because I never marched, I never protested, but I guess in a sense I was undermining the system with the facts and the truth about what was going on here, what had happened here, and what's still here.
And blues was another vehicle to share that message?
Blues was a message to share that. Another opportunity to share the message. But I don't really get a chance to do the whole social consciousness thing. I present stuff to the side to get them where they want to know. And if they want to know, they can find out. They don't have to listen to me. because my stuff is limited. You know, there's new stuff coming out every day. Like I said, 4 or 5 years ago, I found out the Native American influence impacted the blues, some parts of the blues. I didn't know that.
How did you find
And
that out?
I thought I knew something.
How did you find that out?
That's a good question. I don't remember exactly how I found it out, but it came from several sources. One was a guy named Link Ray, who was early on, I think he was Creek. And something I read somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have my sources with me,
That's
but,
okay. I just wondered if there was.
all people would have to do is look it up.
Yeah.
And the Carolina chocolate drops.
Don or Rihanna? Don Flemings?
Don Foreman.
And Rihanna
Flemings, yes.
Flemings, yeah.
And Rihanna getting.
Yeah, that it was from some of that experience with them that information came out.
I want to follow up on something you said earlier too about Oklahoma being this sort of thorough way, right? So I think what you're saying is that blues musicians from the South and the East had to travel through Oklahoma to get to the Midwest and the West, the coasts, right? So can you tell me some about where were the stops in the state for that?
Tulsa and Oklahoma City, maybe Guthrie,
Yeah.
but those were the main stops.
What we're talking about right now, is this a time period, like a large time period, or are we talking about like the more recent times?
No, that was through the 30s, 40s, and the 50s, early 50s.
Yeah.
And then sometimes some of the groups would even, but that was much later, they would even stop in Muskogee. Tina Turner, Freddie King, Little Junior Parker, the Midnighters, they would play in Muskogee. But that was in the late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah. So what were some of the places that were known as those stops? Like, those are the cities. Are there like, I know there are, but what are some of the venues? Do you know?
I don't know that.
Okay. I was just curious, because the thing about Oklahoma, and you've mentioned this, is that, we have this history of Black settlements, all Black towns. We were close to being an all Black state when we were founded. So it's this interesting space when it comes to this, to Black culture and these communities. So I was also thinking about, were there Black towns that would have been stops along the way? So for Taft, who has all these juke joints, was that a place where people in the state would travel to go play music, or was it just people around Taft that would come in?
It was more local,
Mm-hmm.
Muskogee and Tulsa. And when they couldn't get those guys, they would get my little group. And and then because of that, we could go in and watch them and listen to what these guys, but we had to know where the door was because we were still in high school.
Yeah. Well, I know you've got a show today, which is part of why we were able to talk to you, because you got to play on the stage later. And as you said, you got off the big stage as a filler and you're teaching on the side. But part of what we're also looking at is you talked about what the Blues Hall of Fame, what the Dusk Till Dawn Blues Festival, what the Down Home Blues Club, they're all part of the same thing. You talked about sort of what it means to people and how it keeps people together and what it means for Renniesville. What do you hope for in the future?
To continue and to learn and to study it. Make it something that they study like they do classical, because it is a foundation, an essence that comes from an experience, a shared experience. And it needs to be studied instead of like Son House say, people say they playing the blues, anything, a little jumpy here, the jumpy there, that ain't the blues. So
Why do you keep coming back after all these years?
because I get a chance to do it, and then I listen to see where is it going now, who's doing what, and what are they doing, and then, like I said, there are some that are still doing the foundation, and I'm trying to be supportive of them. Selby knows that I'm losing my touch with my rhythm. I had a stomp box, and my rhythm is leaving me with this neuropathy. So she was saying, we got to get somebody to do your song, do your music, and let you still tell the stories. And I go, when you going to find somebody that can play just like I do and keep the touch? Because my guitar is with my beat and my heart and my ear, because I'm not a natural melodious singer. You know, them soul brothers with them melodious voices.
Yes, sir. That leads me to a question. How much more time do you have?
About 10 minutes.
Okay, that leads me to more of a blues cultural music question. What is his name? He told me, I see his face, like, oh man, he's gonna be mad. He said, the issue is non-blues people play a music pattern or a chord structure, but the blues is not based on any chord structure, but is actually the guitars are tuned to the heart and the rhythm. Terry Harmonica Bean said this to me.
Okay.
That and I must say it, and I would like you to feed us with what you take it from, what you believe. There's no music pattern or theory when it comes to the blues structure like Western music, because bluesmen and women tuned their instrument to the rhythm of their heart and being.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Well, that explains the core part of the blues. What makes the foundation still alive is how they tuned it, how they played it, how they put their feelings in it. And from the bottom up. And they many times could not see how it's going to get any better. But you do it anyway. And you throw everything in it. Like they say in basketball or football or karate match. Leave it on the mat. Don't bring nothing back with you. Throw everything you have into this and leave it out there. And that's one of the things that I think they did with the blues. They just played the blues and let the people dance away their frustrations, their anger, their disappointments, their hurt. Dance those feelings away, and then walk out of that place going home, and you're clean, you're wiped out. And you get ready for some more mess because somebody's going to start something, especially if they think you're happy.
It's a church, ultimately.
Yeah.
The Church of Blues.
Well, the church and secular and gospel is just one coin. It depends on which way it goes. It gives the people an opportunity to lament either way, whether church or blues. And that's why you had so many guys that would do that. Son House, Sister Rosetta Thorpe, and you just take it down the line, and then all the way up to Little Richard and Sam Cooke, and you just go right down the line with because it gave them a chance to lament. And the church people didn't like it about you doing the blues like that, but some of the guys did it. And like Tommy Dorsey, he added blues to the gospel. You know, you get the church manual, hymnal, and you go through 336, and you just sing it straight down in Western style. But Tommy Dorsey came in with some blues into the gospel, and gospel has impacted blues. And so it's just one coin.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's called worrying the line.
Who else do you think is keeping the history of blues alive here?
Pat Moss and Selby Minner. A guy named Hugh Foley Jr. wrote a book, and it is comprehensive and thorough. I imagine there may be others, but those are the two that I know for sure. And then another guy named Tony Matthews. He played with Ray Charles, and he's a true blues man and a virtuoso with the guitar, and he has a melodious voice. I used to tease Tony. I'd say, "Tony, it ain't fair." I say, "You're good looking, you can sing your ass off, and you play the shit out of that guitar."
Selby mentioned Pat Moss.
Pat Moss.
But I did not know that you guys played together, so that explains a lot. Do you have any other questions?
Do you have anything else that you think that we should know about?
No, you guys have done a great job with this, and I'm glad that I got to contribute. And go ahead.
But the last question I always ask everyone, is there anything that you thought or hoped one of us would have asked you that we did not ask you?
No, I can't think of anything. Maybe when I'm driving home tonight, something will pop in my mind.
Text it to me.
That's right. That's great. Well, thanks for letting us steal you away, literally steal you away for a little bit of time. And we appreciate you talking to us and what you're doing for.
Okay, well, as we say in Taft, thank you and you're welcome.
Nice.
It's both sides of the coin right there.
Yeah.